I got a phone call from a mutual friend about a lady that had been raped. We booked her in. When I first saw her, there were a few things that were very obvious. The first is that she was Caucasian, she was English. The second, she was wearing a headscarf, a hijab. And the third, her eyes would ferret around. She was extremely scared and terrified, almost like something or someone would pounce on her at any second. So, in a very unassuming way, I asked her how I could help, and she began to tell me her story. She reverted a couple of years previous and she got married, and every week she would go to a Friday circle, a halaqah. 2 weeks ago she went to one, and when she finished, she'd come out, she's feeling good, she called her husband, she said, "Can you please pick me up? I finished." Her husband replied and responded that he was too busy and maybe she should catch a cab, a taxi. So she called the company up and a car came. She got into the cab and she got comfortable, and she realized sooner or later that this was not a taxi, this was not a cab. Someone had listened into the frequency somehow and came instead, and now she was in the car and it was locked and she was unable to get out. Terrified, panicking, she tried to get out, she couldn't. The man took her to a local park in the middle of the day, 1 o'clock, 2 p.m, and proceeded unfortunately to rape her. Now it was in broad daylight, so people were able to see this, and they quickly called the police. The police came, and when they came they had to pry the man off of her. He was such a criminal, such an animal, that even when the police were there he wanted to continue the act. Finally they were able to get him off, and they took her to the police station. They didn't really need her to witness much because they'd seen what happened themselves. Things finished quickly and she was eager to go back home to her husband and to the shelter of her house. When she got home, expecting to be greeted by her husband, etc., she told him the story, and her husband was really ashamed. "How could you do this? I can't believe that this happened. This is such a dishonour on me and my family." Hurt, alone, a revert. She'd just been raped, violated, both physically and emotionally. The humiliation of it, happening in a park, the police coming, having to pry this man off. She felt awful. So this was currently her state of mind, and this was the story that she had told me. So I could tell from her eyes that she had that look of desperation, like a caged lion that had lost all hope. So I asked her, "How many times do you remember this incident a day?" She said, "Hundreds of times." I said, "And is it enjoyable?" She said, "No, of course not." I said, "How bad is this man for raping you, for violating you?" She said, "He is a criminal." She couldn't find the words, but it was obvious in her body language. So I said to her, "Do you realize that every time you remember and relive this incident, you are raping yourself? And so however bad he is, you're hundreds of times worse every day." Now she stopped. She was shocked, perturbed, but at the same time there was a spark of hope in her eyes. And the reason why was she realized that she had control and that she could stop the pain that she was inflicting upon herself. She didn't realize that it was her that was inflicting the pain upon herself. 45 minutes into the session, alhamdulillah, everything was resolved. She could remember, she could see, visualize what happened, but she did not get any of the negative emotions that were associated with what happens, none of the pain. And this is really important because it means that she can remember what happened, she can still hold on to some of the lessons, if there are any lessons, whilst not having to be held ransom by her emotions. And if you want further details, inshallah, about what I did during the session, then please visit the website that's appearing now on the screen. So she went back home, very eager to go back to her husband. She'd felt that she had changed, she'd felt that she was over it, she wasn't as weak anymore, and that her husband would appreciate the fact that she had been through this hell that she'd been through, and that she went and sought help, and now she was better. She went back home and I didn't see her for a week and a half, but I was eager to check up on her to make sure that she was okay. So she came round. Now this time I noticed a few other things about her. The first time I saw her, she didn't have any bruises on her face. This time her face was filled with bruises. I asked her what happened, and she looked at me and she said in a very unconvincing tone of voice, "I fell down the stairs." Now she knew that she sounded unconvincing, and she knew that I knew that she sounded unconvincing. And I knew what it meant. It meant that her husband had hit her, beaten her for whatever reason. So that was the first thing that I noticed about her. But the second thing that I noticed about her was her eyes were different. They were not the eyes of a caged lion. They were not the eyes of someone that had been beaten on the inside. No, they were the eyes of a warrior who had just entered into a fight, They might have won, they might have lost, it doesn't matter. And this is when I knew that she had changed. Yes, on the outside she was beaten again. You know, the first man that violated her was not her husband, and he had raped her. The second man didn't rape her, but he was her husband, and he still violated her physically. But she was not broken anymore. She was extremely strong. So I asked her, what are you going to do now? And she said, it's okay, I know what to do. And I knew from her tone of voice that she had had enough. She was married as a second wife to a man who did not appreciate her, to a man who thought he would just have another wife. She was a revert, her family had left her, it was an easy option for him. But subhanAllah, this woman had now changed. She left my office. Unlike before, this time she was a mountain of pride, a mountain of strength. And I've not seen her since. But I've heard good stuff about her. It's been a few years. None of the stories that I will talk to you about have happened within the last year to protect confidentiality, and I'll never mention names, etc. So it's been a few years since I've heard about her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate her stature and make her stronger. And if you want to help, then please make dua for this sister. Like I said, she, as you can see, she went through hard trials and her tribulations, but she was all the better and she was all the stronger afterwards. Alhamdulillah. See you in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.